Hi, John Dickson here from the Centre for Public Christianity. In a public lecture I recently gave in a corporation in Sydney, someone from the floor asked me a very interesting question. They said, could you please define sin? It's not really the topic for discussion in a corporate event, but I gave it my best shot. It seems to me that Australians, especially Australians, like to define sin as those naughty vices some people get up to, swearing too much, drinking too much, illicit sex, and so on. I think there's a kind of convenience to that definition of sin, because those of us who do get up to a few of those vices can think God pretty petty for getting so annoyed at those things. And those of us who don't get up to too many of those vices can think ourselves clean, can think that we're not guilty of any sin. That's the other people. But actually, on reflection, and as I tried to describe in this lecture, Jesus had a very different understanding of sin. He was once in a situation where he had a whole bunch of people who were classed as sinners in his audience, and a whole bunch of people who were classed as religious leaders, Pharisees, in the same audience. And he was being challenged over why he mixed with sinners. And he told one of his famous parables, a hypothetical if you like. It's the famous parable of the prodigal son. And in it, he basically defines who he thinks the sinner is. The parable basically goes like this. He said, a father has two sons, one older, one younger. The older boy's a pretty good boy. The younger one walks up to his dad one day and says, "Father, give me my share of the inheritance now." Now this was as good as asking for dad to be dead, for him to give him the inheritance he would get when the father passed away. But in the story, in the parable, the father, quite ridiculously, hands him his inheritance up front. And then the son goes and lives in a foreign country for years and spends all the inheritance on himself. After a while, he returns to the father, and this is why it's called the prodigal son, the wasteful son who returns to his father. Now, why this is such an interesting parable for the question of what Jesus thought is sin, is that when you think about what this son did, it is a beautiful definition of sin that isn't so much about vice as about relationship. What does the son do? He wants everything the father has to offer, all of the benefits of the household, but doesn't want anything to do with the father himself. He wants the gifts of the household, not the giver. This is a superb insight, I think, into the real biblical view of this little foreign word called sin. The sinner is the person who wants everything the Creator has to offer in the creation, but just doesn't want the Creator. Wants these things and wants to spend these things on themselves at a distance from the provider. Now, when you think about that definition of sin, Australians are world-class sinners. We are experts at enjoying the gifts of the Creator. Sex, food, the outdoors, the cafe life, technology, sport, media, and yet rarely stopping to give thanks to the source of these things, rarely asking how these things should be used, rarely, if ever, apologizing for their misuse. We, like the young son in Jesus' parable, want everything the Creator has to give, but we don't want the Creator. On Jesus' definition, we're sinners. Regardless of whether I have a life of vice, the sinner for Jesus is the person who wants everything in the creation without the Creator.